All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Blessed Ash Wednesday to all of you. I'm aware that this overlaps Ash Wednesday services, and this is being recorded. So anyone who's unable to make it and wants to view it later due to Ash Wednesday conflicts, this will be available, and I will email it. As for Zoom etiquette, this is a Zoom meeting for the sake of being able to have conversation. So if you are not actively speaking, please remember to mute your microphone so that you don't pop up on the screens for everyone else to see. Thank you. So this is the first of a four-part series for Lent on Ramadan in a new country. The primary audience is for those of you who are hosting Afghan refugees, as folks from Afghanistan are 99% Sunni Muslim. 70% of the world's refugees right now are from Muslim countries, so this is relevant elsewhere as well. And the reason why we're doing this during Lent is because Ramadan itself is a very similar practice to Lent, and it may be a good practice for you if you choose to do so, to learn about the culture of the people that you're hosting and how they practice their month of fasting and spiritual nearness to God as we do our own. Also, Ramadan is going to be coming up tentatively on April 2nd, and I will explain why that's tentatively. Again, this is a four-part series. So this first one is going to be on the basics of Islam and Ramadan and what it means. The second part of the series is going to be about the stuff, what to get for your families when Ramadan does begin, and how to physically prepare yourself and them. The third part of the series is going to be a comparison of Ramadan and Lent in practice, and how we can faithfully live into that. We may have a guest speaker that week, our minister for ecumenical and interfaith ministries. His name is Mark. And then the fourth week is going to be about racism in refugee services and how that plays into the current climate of refugee resettlement and what it means to be a Muslim, brown, or Black immigrant trying to get to the United States, given the trajectory of the way that resettlement processes are going in 2022. Again, if you're just popping in, remember to mute your microphone as you come in so that you don't pop up on the screen. Oops. Okay, so to start, just a real basic, what is Islam? So Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. There's about 1.6 billion Muslims worldwide, and the religion thinks of itself as the continuation of the Abrahamic religions. So they do believe the Torah is true, they do believe the Bible is true, and that the Quran, which is the holy book of Islam, is the perfection of a line of prophecy from the Torah and the Bible. So you see a lot of the characters from both of these books in the Quran. For example, Moses, Adam, Joseph, Jesus. We see all of those prophets in the Quran as well. One major difference between Islam and Christianity that, again, we'll talk about in more in depth in the third week about comparison is on the focus of what's important. If you are not actively speaking, I do ask that you mute your microphone just so that we don't have a lot of static noise. Thank you so much. The major difference is that in our religion, in Christianity, as I'm assuming that most of the folks calling in are from UCC churches, as this is a UCC presentation, Jesus is the center of our religion, and Jesus is perfection. Whereas in Islam, the Quran is perfection. So in seminaries, we learn as seminary students oftentimes that, the Bible is sort of a mishmash of hundreds of people writing it and rewriting it and contradicting itself. And it's not a perfect document in a lot of ways, while Jesus is a perfect human being. In the opposite vein, in Islam, The Quran
Right,
is an
that's my
absolutely perfect
point
document.
here.
It's written with such perfection that nothing in it contradicts itself. It's written in perfect form and prose, and it's the opposite in that the person who the Quran was revealed to, which is the Prophet Muhammad, is not considered perfect, which is why there are no images of the Prophet Muhammad or any other prophets. Is the idea is not to idolize a human being, but instead elevate Allah or God, God's self, through the words of their scripture. So that's the basic difference between Islam and Christianity, is that Christianity is about the person of Jesus, Islam is about the book of the Quran. Um, as I said, the relevancy for the reason why we're talking about this in this context is that most refugees in the current climate are Muslim. This has not always been true. That trajectory has taken place over the last 20 years
I'm
or
just going to
so,
go through the
a
pictures
little
and
bit
see who's
longer.
here. I see Raina is here.
Please remember to mute your microphone if you're not
Oh,
actively
and
speaking.
Jan Powers is here.
Oh, please,
And Diana.
please.
And excuse me, someone has their microphone open. Please make sure that your microphone is closed. Thank you so much. So instead of me telling you so much about Islam, and the way that I actually know about this is I lived in Jordan, Islamic country, for a long time. I also studied it in seminary with the intention of being present with populations of the growing refugee crisis around the world, which again is predominantly Muslim. So that's the sort of background I have in it. Although, of course, it is better to hear from folks that are Muslim. So the UCC has this documentary. I have lots of copies of it sitting right here. So if anyone wants one mailed to them, I'm happy to do so. I have it on USB form. And it's a documentary made by Muslims to present to interfaith settings such as ours. So I'm just going to show you a snippet about basically how Ramadan came to be, since that's the central focus of
Can you hear
our
it?
talk today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this, and I'm going to open up a snippet from the documentary film Discover Islam. And this one is Islam, Faith, and History. So let me go ahead and pause share. That didn't work. There we go. Okay. All right, can everyone see that? Can you nod your head if you can see that? No, no one can see Islam, Faith, and History on my screen. That's not what you're looking at.
Mm-mm.
No, really? Let me try again. They don't teach you technology in seminary, although I'm learning. Thank you for your patience. Okay, how about now? Can you guys see it now? Great. Okay. I'm going to press play, and you just let me know if you can hear it. Again, this section that I'm showing you is about the the beginning of how Ramadan as a practice came to be. And also a little bit of interesting history about Islam before it became just the 70% population of refugees. There's a lot more to religion than that. You can hear it? No? Oh no! I don't know how to fix that.
Very little. You are you on your headset or anything?
No, so you can hear it as just very low. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. You may have to change the settings of your output mic.
Mountains. At the age of 40,
There.
while engaged in a meditative retreat atop a mountain near Mecca, Muhammad was called to his mission. Muhammad was called to prophethood.
One night in the 9th lunar month of the Muslim calendar, he received revelation from an angel that completely startled him. He wasn't expecting it. He didn't seek it. He in fact tried to reject it. He was worried about it. When the Prophet was in the cave, he heard a voice that told him in Arabic, "Iqra," which basically means to read or recite. And the prophet, who was unlettered at the time, who was unable to read or write, told this voice, this presence, I don't know how. And this presence squeezed him to the point where he almost collapsed. The prophet then knew he wasn't dreaming, because he was stunned by this physical presence. It wasn't just a voice. And again, the command was repeated, Iqra, read. And he repeated again, I don't know how, I'm not a reader. And then again, this presence, who was the angel Gabriel, as we now know, embraced him again to the point where he almost collapsed. And he was told, Iqra, read. And he said, I am not a reader. And then more came. It was, read in the name of your Lord who created.
Read in the name of your Lord who created the human from clinging cells. Read, and your Lord is most bountiful, the one who taught with the pen, taught the human what he did not know. These 5 verses were the first revelation that God sent to Muhammad through the archangel Gabriel. This revelation, which continued for 23 years, is known as the Quran.
Before oil and before Islam, the only resource of the Arabs was Arabic. And it is a language that is almost mathematical in its grammar, but in its yield, it's very sublime and subtle. And the Arabs were great poets, and they were masters of language. It was their sole science. When the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad, it was revealed in Arabic. They were so stunned by its beauty, because they have a developed sense of appreciation. And the irony is, because it was so beautiful, for those who didn't want to accept it, they were so threatened by it. But clearly no one, not even the most vehement opponents of the Prophet, ever thought that this was less than sublime, less than absolutely beautiful language. Even the ones who tried to assassinate the Prophet, many times, admitted that this book is amazing. This book is not from this world.
Muslims believe that the Quran is the complete and unchanged Word of God. It is the principal source of every Muslim's faith and practice. It is not only recited in the 5 daily prayers, but is also a practical guide to life, dealing with issues ranging from birth to death and everything in between. Muhammad shared the Quran, God's message, with his people. With the exception of a few, most of the people of Mecca rejected his call to worship one God. Muhammad and his followers became the subjects of bitter persecution. In 622, God gave the Muslim community the command to migrate to the city of Medina. Here, under the Prophet's inspired leadership, a model Muslim community evolved, a community that gave women equal rights to that of men, a community that removed race, language, and culture barriers, where a person's status was not determined by the color of their skin, their gender, or their wealth, but rather by the quality of their character. At the time of the Prophet's death in 632, the Muslim community had grown exponentially, and the whole of Arabia, including the people of Mecca, had accepted Islam. The Muslim community continued to grow after Prophet Muhammad's death. Within a few decades, vast numbers of people across 3 continents, Africa, Asia, and Europe, had chosen Islam as their way of life. One of the reasons for the rapid and peaceful spread of Islam was the purity of its doctrine. Islam calls for faith in only one God. This, coupled with the Islamic concepts of equality, justice, and freedom, resulted in a united and peaceful community. People were free to travel from Spain to China without fear and without crossing any borders.
Islamic civilization grew up right next door to European Christian civilization. Islam was not exotic. Islam was not foreign. Islam was not difficult to understand. Islam for Christian Europe in the Middle Ages was extremely close, physically and ideologically. Islamic civilization gave it the stained glass windows of our churches and synagogues. A lot of the vegetables and fruit that we eat, tea and coffee, sugar, a lot of the medicine, astronomy, philosophy, mathematics, algebra, algorithms, and optics. The exchange was a profound exchange, and the Muslim world fertilized the Christian world.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Do I have to adjust the sound now that I've stopped sharing that? You can hear me? Okay, okay, great. So, like I said, I have copies of that if anyone wants to see more. I'll also be showing more snippets of that throughout this series. But basically, you know, what these scholars are saying, and that is true, is that Islam is way more than just this refugee crisis that's happening right now. Actually, Islam and its history was a very affluent. Okay, so if you guys want copies, you can email me your address of where you'd like it sent, and I'd be happy to do so. Okay. But so it has this very affluent history. So when all of us Christians, white Christians, were dying in Europe of the plague and having wars over theology and stuff, the Muslim world was thriving. They were inventing chemistry. They were inventing math. They were inventing politics. They had this whole world that we just don't learn about in our history books. They had an empire that's one of the longest lasting empires in history and the most peaceful empire in history. And Islam prides itself on the fact that women were able to be business owners, women were able to have authority in their families way long before we had those things in the Western world. We've had that for like, what, 50 years, women can have their own bank accounts. Islam, women have had their own bank accounts and businesses since the beginning, which was the year 623, I think is the year that the Quran was revealed to the Prophet Muhammad. And that brings us back to Ramadan, which is our main focus of discussion. So I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint now. Let's see this one. So Ramadan is considered to be the representation of the 30 days that the Prophet Muhammad spent in the desert having the Quran revealed to him. As this video clarifies, he was a desert nomad. I think he was a shepherd. He was also an orphan. He was illiterate. And so it was very amazing that he put together this perfect document after spending 30 days in the desert. And so Ramadan represents those 30 days of fasting and spiritual closeness to God that Muslims replicate every year. Just like Lent represents the 40 days that Jesus spent in the desert. It's a representation of a journey into revelation. Both of them are. So it begins with a crescent moon sighting. The reason why I said tentatively April 2nd is because they don't really know when it's going to start. Please remember to mute your microphone if you don't have it already, just so we don't have you popping up on the screen. Thank you so much. So this picture here is actually a photo that I took in Hawaii of the moment that we saw the crescent moon. The crescent moon is called by scholars, by Islamic scholars in every time zone. They literally stand out for 2 or 3 days just watching the moon to see if it's the right shape for Ramadan to start. And so remember, this was the moment in 2018 that the mosque put out the message that the crescent moon had been sighted in Hawaii. So I snapped a photo of it. That's what it looks like. And that's when Ramadan starts, which they have an approximate time of when the crescent moon will look like that, but they don't know exactly. So you'll see 2 or 3 days before Ramadan, like, are we fasting tomorrow? Are we not? And then you see that and you know that the next day is the start of your fast. And the way that they fast is incredibly intense. It really puts Lent and our idea of this sort of idea that's evolved over time with Lent of giving one thing up to shame, because they really do it very intensely, in which they, well, I'll get to that in the next slide about all the things that goes into a fast for Ramadan. But basically the fast starts at sunrise every day, and that's called Fajr. And that it depends on the time zone that you're in. You know, in 2022, I have an app on my phone that tells me when Fajr is, and then the app starts singing to me to tell me that I don't get to eat anymore or various other activities. And then Maghrib is when you can break your fast, and that's sunset. So sunrise to sunset, they participate in this fast. And that's really dependent on where you live, right? In Hawaii, the days don't really change. So usually that was about 4:30 a.m. until about 7 p.m. every day. But it depends on where you're at. Ramadan moves on the calendar because it's on a moon calendar. It's not on a sun calendar. So it moves up 2 weeks every year. So it's not static. So when my children are about 10 years old, it'll be in the winter, which will be easier because the days are shorter, right? Ramadan during the summer, which is when I started fasting for Ramadan, very hard because I was in Jordan and it was August and the days were long and super hot. One question that people have is, what do people do in like Alaska or Iceland or Greenland or wherever, you know, in the world where there's like an hour of daytime? Muslims in parts of the world that have unusual light like that are allowed to go by Saudi Arabia's time zone if they want to. So in Saudi Arabia, when it's sunrise and sunset, that's when they can also do their fast. But a lot of Muslims that are in places way far out in the global north and global south do actually follow the policy of just shoveling in food for 1 hour of the day and then spending the rest of the day fasting. And then the end of Ramadan, again, is the same thing like the beginning of it, in which they have to look for the moon to be a crescent again, and they don't exactly know when it's going to end. So a day or two before what's called Eid, which is the celebration at the end of Ramadan, everyone's going out and checking the moon, see if it's time yet to break the fast, but they don't exactly know when that's going to happen. It's approximately 30 days, but it totally depends on the moon. And then that celebration at the end again is called Eid al-Fitr or Eid al-Fitr. And that is a celebration where all Muslims get together and rejoice at the revealing of the Quran, spend time with their families, much like Christmas, exchange gifts. We'll get more into that. Again, next week is going to be about the stuff, about gifts and decorations and how to make it very Ramadan-y in this new country. Okay, so here's what it involves. So it's not just food, right? They don't just not eat. They don't drink water. They don't drink water for 17, 18 hours a day. That is by far and away the hardest part. Has anyone ever like not drank water for 18 hours at a time? Your brain gets a little loopy. No smoking, no sex, no music, no cursing. They call this the restriction of worldly habits. And instead they elevate spiritual habits such as prayer, reading the Quran, charity, and kindness. Charity is increased during Ramadan. And so that's what you're expected to fill your time with. If you're feeling thirsty and you really just want a glass of water, then you just read the Quran instead, is the idea. The only people that are relieved from doing Ramadan, and they have to make these days up later if they don't do it during Ramadan, are women who are on their period. And the purpose of that is because women are already having a hard time with losing fluids while they're on their period. So they're not expected to participate in Ramadan. In fact, it's not allowed. But they do have to make up the days later at some other point in the year. Or elderly or infirm people, but oftentimes you find that people that are elderly or ill will still do it anyway because it's become a natural habit for them to do this every year. And of course, children. Usually children are integrated into doing Ramadan around the age of 8 or 9. And they do half days where they'll just fast from sunrise until noon and do more increased reading of the Quran and prayer. Speaking of children, I apologize if you're hearing some background noise. My kids are home. And then every night there is a feast. It's called iftar. Iftar means the great breakfast, and it is definitely a feast, because when you are hungry and you've been fasting all day, your brain is bigger than your stomach. So if you go over to a Muslim's house for an iftar meal, you're going to get all sorts of salads and special candies and dishes. They drink a lot of soup during Ramadan, because that is a safe way to bring your body back from the shock of not eating or drinking water all day. They'll start off with a cup of soup. Sometimes that's all they'll eat to be safe and not hurt themselves. They are very good at knowing the limits of their body, because they've been doing it for years. They've perfected it to a science. They open the breaking of the fast, which again is at sunset, which is called Maghrib, with a date in a glass of water. And the reason for that is because that's how the Prophet Muhammad broke his fast, was with dates. So that's definitely a key item to assist your families with finding is dates. And then, of course, just like any holiday, Christmas, there's seasonal TV shows, games, and places they visit, things that go on culturally in their neighborhoods that happen that they're not going to have in this new world. Like I said, this will be a new world to them. So imagine being in a country that doesn't celebrate Christmas. And Christmas is one day of the year. We sort of culturally celebrate it all December, with the lights and the games and the Santa Claus and going to church and all the other things that we do to celebrate Christmas. But really, Christmas in a lot of ways isn't as intense as Ramadan. As you see, Ramadan is a practice, and they are all doing it together. As you see in this photo, just think about this. Every single individual in every time zone who is Muslim prays at the exact same time, especially during Ramadan. They start their fast, all thousands, if not millions of individuals in a single time zone start their fast at the same time. They pray at the same time. They break their fast at the same time. And I mean, is there anything in your life that you can think of in which you are doing the exact same thing as every other person at the same time? They are losing that coming to America. It's very much a communal space. Ramadan, everyone's doing it together, and the entire culture revolves around making it palatable. Folks do still go to work and go to school. It's still expected to go about your daily lives, but of course, less is expected in the office, less is expected in the classroom. Shops and restaurants will be closed all day because no one's going to go eat in the middle of the day. And then this magical thing happens at half an hour to Maghrib, in which everything opens up and comes alive. That's going to be missing to them. They're going to be in a culture in which no one is recognizing this amazing thing that they're doing, and it's going to be really hard. It increases a sense of meaning. I loved Ramadan, Jordan, which is why I picked up the habit. It was just this magical time for 30 days of the year in which everyone was doing the same thing together. And I just invite you to be in the space of thinking about how that would feel to lose that. So what's expected of you as the sponsor? And we will get more into depth with this next week. But basically, being flexible about expectations. Like I said, they will be expected to go to work. They will be expected to go to school. That will be an old hat for them. But they're going to be tired. They're going to be a little dingy because no matter how much practice you get, it's not easy to go 18 hours without water. Just being present with knowing that they're going to behave differently, and they're probably going to be a little sad because again, this isn't the culture in which these things are normal. So being flexible with them starting next month is going to be the number one goal. You could host an iftar dinner, and I will also talk more about that next week, is how you put together hosting an iftar dinner. Lots of soup, get soup, dates. But that's a nice thing to do, is either inviting. They'll probably want to host an iftar dinner for you. If you invite your family to come to your house and you'll host the iftar dinner, they'll probably want to do the opposite, because it's an act of charity to feed you. But you know, you could offer it and say, and I could tell you about different kinds of food you could cook. But you could offer to host an iftar dinner at your church in coordination with the local mosque, or just your family or your family and their friends. But of course, don't expect that they're going to say yes. They have autonomy and they can say no, thank you, that they don't want to participate in that. But in my experience, most often they love sharing that. Offer to help. So especially the women, right? So women are in the kitchen cooking all of this food when they are very hungry. And let me tell you what, that's very hard to do, to cook an enormous meal when you are running on a very empty tank of gas. So offering to help with the kids so that they can focus on cooking, offering to help clean so that they can rest, or offering to help cook so that they can rest. They're not going to expect that from you, because again, this is a spiritual journey for them in which they're expecting it to be hard. So again, they could also say no, because that's part of their spiritual journey, is to have life to be a little bit harder during this time. But offering to help is never a bad thing. And again, if you see a woman who isn't apparently fasting, she's probably exempt, and that's okay. You don't have to mention it to her. She knows why, you know why. It's cool. You can also intend to learn more, you know, maybe through these videos I could send you, or watching YouTube, or just be open to what your family teaches you. They may want to tell you all these beautiful stories of Ramadans from the past and bring you into the world. And that's such an honorable invitation if you receive that invitation to learn more about it. So I encourage you to be open to that space of learning. Of course, you can offer gifts of decorating their homes, or giving them money to decorate their homes. You can also provide Eid gifts for the children. Again, Eid al-Fitr is the end of Ramadan. A lot of cultures actually don't exchange gifts. What they do is they exchange money. So giving a kid a $5 bill is considered a good Eid gift, because who doesn't like cash? But you could talk to the parents about that, if it's okay to give Eid gifts to their kids. Women and children tend to be the primary recipients of Eid gifts, because again, women take on a lot of the role of making Ramadan happen. You know, we women are pretty good at making all holidays happen, right? But I think especially in Islam, because it's expected every night to have this huge, amazing feast. And then find Eid celebrations in your area. Figure out where you can direct them to so that they can have their holiday at the end of the month, which again will be approximately May 2nd. But they don't really know, and they know that. So that's those are things that you guys could do to help. And we'll be going over more of this next week with the iftar dinner, what to cook, what kind of utensils to bring, what kind of decorations they may want to have. The decorations that are common are stars and moons, again, because all of this is dependent on the moon. Islam is on a moon calendar. And also these little lanterns called fanus, and you can I usually buy those at Pier 1. I don't really know what's with the lanterns. I guess it's just because of the lights, because they live in the dark, right, during Ramadan. So I think just the idea of added light, in the same way that lights are a light in a dark time during Christmas as well, right? It's symbolic. But little lanterns are a common decoration for Ramadan. That's another thing about behavior that will change, is that your families are going to be up all night. And they'll probably just be tired at work all day, because that's the time they get to spend with their family, eating, drinking, laughing, listening to music, playing games, watching TV. They can only do that at night. So they stay up all night. And so that will be a habit change that you'll see. Okay, so as I said, this is what we're going to be doing with this series. This is just an overview of Islam and Ramadan. Next week, we're going to talk about stuff, about how to cook a meal, what that meal looks like, what sort of stuff to provide. For example, how do they eat these meals? What sort of utensils do they use? Should you be providing that? Do they already have it? What is etiquette around an iftar meal if you decide to host one or participate in one? And then the week after that is going to be Ramadan and Lent. And again, as I said, I'm going to probably be inviting Mark Pettis to come speak more about that. And that will be more of a spiritual practice of discerning for ourselves about, as we learn more about Ramadan, and more about our families, about what that means for our Lenten practice and how we're willing to let go and grow through our own fasting practice, to learn more about theirs. And then March 23rd is going to be, let's talk about race and racism in the refugee resettlement system, because that has a lot to do with Muslims and folks coming over from brown and black cultures, and how that interacts with the refugee resettlement system. So we may also have a guest speaker for that one. Yeah, so that's basically the entirety of this particular presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I also don't want to take up your whole night, as I know that, like I said, folks have church services to be at. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for any questions or comments or anything you would like me to elaborate. Yeah, Susan.
Yes, I had a question. You had said that that women were considered equal, and I currently see a real difference in the Muslim society. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Yeah. They consider equal to be separate roles. So a woman's primary role in a lot of Islamic culture is still to take care of the kids, cook, clean, take care of the house. That is still their primary role, but that's considered to be an equally godly role to going outside of the house and working. A woman in Islam is allowed to work, and she is allowed to own a business. She is allowed to have a bank account. She is allowed to have all these things, as long as it doesn't distract from her primary duty of being a caretaker for her children and her family. But you know, the Prophet Muhammad, he had 9 wives, and all of them were warriors, businesswomen. They all went out and you know, were messengers of Islam on behalf of the Prophet. They are allowed to speak publicly. I hope that answers your question a little bit. It's more like a separate but equal situation. If that's a topic of interest, I can also integrate that into next week as well. Is women in Islam. One of the videos that I have in this box set is about women in Islam, and I can share part of that next week as well.
That I think would be great. We're welcoming our first family on Friday, and we have been told we can't even go visit the home unless the father is present. So it's just such a different culture than we're used to here. So I think any help you can give with that would be wonderful.
Sure, yeah, I can focus on women in Islam next week. I mean, it won't take very long to talk about all the stuff that you might need for Ramadan. We can do women. I mean, the purpose of not allowing you into the home if the women aren't there is meant to be for their protection. The idea of not being able to cross-gender shake someone's hand, cross-gender look someone in the eyes is meant for the protection of the woman in both sides of that situation. And so that's their understanding of how they protect their women is by honoring them, by not directly interacting unless you're of the same sex.
What about sharing about Easter and Lent and, you know, our special days and traditions? Any thoughts about that and how to do that?
You mean sharing it with your family? Like the family you're hosting?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, sure, you could talk to them about Easter and Lent. They're going to find Easter confusing. Christmas, everyone loves Christmas. You know, again, Jesus was a prophet in Islam. There's a whole book about him being born in the Quran. Christmas isn't an ideological problem to them. The problem that they have is Easter. They don't in Islam, it's not believed that Jesus died. It's believed that he was replaced by a surrogate on the cross, and that prophets don't die. All the prophets in Islam are perfect human beings, like they're exemplars of society. Whereas in our Bible, as we see, Moses was a murderer, and Noah was a drunk, and our prophets are kind of rowdy. So they have the same prophets, but they're very admirable human beings. So they don't believe any of their prophets were killed, that they were all ascended into heaven at the end of their time instead of having to go through the pain of death. So that will be problematic to them. The idea of Jesus. Sorry, I was turning off here. The idea of Jesus dying.
Do you have any thoughts about how, to go about it? I mean, invite them to, attend something at church, just talk with them casually at home, or, I don't know. Do you have some thoughts about what would be a good way of sharing that culture?
So the problem with that invitation is because of the power differential. So if you invite them to do something, they might feel pressured into doing it just to make you happy. So I think that before inviting them to a church service, if you want to have a conversation with them about like an interfaith conversation, I would do it at home and in a safe space for them, that they can invite you to leave if they need to. So I would talk to them about it in their home if you want to be able to share in an interfaith way with them.
Yes, ma'am. This is Kathy Rude. Okay, first of all, I didn't understand that the hadith or hadiths or whatever correspond very, very closely with the Quran, which was the revelation. And these are, but do the Muslim folks have different access to different scriptures other than the Hebrew Bible to tell the same stories?
Sorry, I don't think I understand the question. What do you mean? Like the hadiths are considered to be writings of the Prophet Muhammad. They're not on the same level as the Quran.
Okay, scratch that. Going to ancient scriptures, to the story of Hajar and Sarai, for instance, do the Muslims and the Christians use the same sources to draw that story?
Yeah, I mean, Muslims would say that all of this was revealed to Prophet Muhammad in the cave through the Quran, that they didn't source it from anywhere, which is why they considered the Bible to be an imperfect document and the Quran to be a perfect document.
Okay, Hajar is not in the Quran.
There she is. There's actually a whole holiday around her called Hajj, in which they replicate her journey, and that is a different holiday that comes up about 2 months after Eid al-Fitr. It's called Eid al-Adha.
Okay. Well, how do you reconcile some differences here? I had a doctor, a philosophical doctor, I saw a video of him saying that Hajar ran away from Sarai before she was pregnant. That is not what the Hebrew Bible says. How do you reconcile those differences? And also, let's see here. Hajar gets thrown out twice. Never mind, go with the first one. How do you reconcile those differences?
I mean, there are definite differences. They're two different religions. I mean, are you asking how I personally reconcile it? Or
No, I'm wondering where those folks, where the Muslims got those stories and where did the differences come from? If they're written from the same document, where did they become different?
Oh, well, they believe that the Quran wasn't written, it was revealed. That's going to be the standard answer you get, is that it was revealed in a cave, that the Prophet Muhammad didn't even know what the Bible was.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Great. Well, thank you for the feedback. I will definitely focus on women next week if that's an important important place for us to understand our own reactions to the families that we're hosting, and also stuff. So next week is stuff and women, mutually exclusive, but we can discuss those two topics next week. That's fine. Okay. So I will see you next week at 7. And if you're unable to make it live, then this will be recorded and you'll be able to see it later. Okay. A blessed Lent to you. Thank you.